You are going to learn some really neat stuff, and you will definitely be inspired. World-class showmanship while he's playing. Guys, the level of showmanship on this gentleman and his groove and his pocket.
Hi, my name's Corey Doran.
Awesome Clinic by Corey Doran.
Are you breaking things down early enough to exercise certain skill sets? Remember to get out of those habitual stopping point to exercise certain skill sets early enough to make sure that you have the tools to do it.
All those concepts, as you could see in Corey's clinic, they're perfectly transferable to any time that you're going to learn any etude for any situation, right?
I'm here to talk about how to break down a solo and ensemble snare drum etude. I want to thank my sponsors, Innovative Percussion, Sabian Cymbals, Mapex Drums, and Majestic Percussion.
Hi, I'm Allan Leibowitz. I'm the founder and editor of Digital Drummer magazine. I'll be on the Valley Percussion Festival stream on Friday night talking about electronic drums. We'll look into why this segment is growing so fast. Even before COVID, electronic drums were far outselling acoustic drums, and you only had to look at the shop floors to see the explosion of products. Since COVID, it's been even more exacerbated, with electronic drums ending up in all kinds of places. So we'll look at who's using them, why they're popular, whether they're replacing acoustics, where they are in the market. Interestingly, a few weeks ago you would have seen Sibby Siebert of Simmons fame talking about the drums that he was involved in the 80s. And those drums really formed the soundtrack of the 80s and had such a huge impact. Today the market is very different. We've gone away from those exotic sounds and those hexagonal pads. Acoustic looking kits are in. There are all kinds of applications for electronic drums. And anybody who is anybody in drumming has had some kind of exposure. So join us to find out about what's hot, what's not, what's happening, what's changing, and of course the magazine that's behind it all. See you then.
Hello, guys. I am so excited to be here with you guys today. I hope you guys had a great week and that you're getting ready to smooth into a great, restful, family-oriented weekend. Hope you guys have been safe and staying away from COVID and taking all the precautions. Guys, I was talking to our guest today a little bit earlier today, and I was telling him um, how how exciting it is to be able to cover different topics in this Valley Percussion Festival Summer Series edition. Um, when I started to do this event, guys, and I'm talking not the actual event. The event has been going on for 30 years. I personally have been involved with the event for the past 13-ish so years. I mean, since we started to go live, COVID kind of forced us to go there. And we've had so many different topics, percussion education related. And as an spectator, myself, as a viewer, just like all of us here, I have noticed that my wealth of knowledge, but even more importantly, what I have noticed that I am able to do and how I am able to function with that wealth of knowledge is pretty amazing. It's pretty amazing to see, what I can do, how I can interact, how I can teach, how I can perform, how I can practice. It's helped me in so many different ways. And today, guys, one of the topics that is of interest, there's been an explosion in the electronic drum set area, and even before COVID, but even now more so. And guys, there is no better person to talk to us about this than the person that has been involved with the Digital Drummer magazine. He has interviewed tons of people, tons of artists, and he has, been in the know for so long. Get ready to receive a wealth of juicy gold nuggets to put in your toolbox and to make you a better percussion player, a better performer, a better educator, a better instructional leader, a better everything of the above. Guys, without further ado, it is an honor to have with us Mr. Allan Leibowitz. How are you doing, sir?
Hey, Gilbert, thank you very much for having me here. Let me tell you, I'm already in the weekend because I'm in Australia where it's Saturday morning. It's stacking up to be a great weekend. I hope that everybody around the world gets here and gets here in good health and safety and in good rhythm.
Yes. So when I said, as we smooth into the weekend, you were like, I just went through that. I'm already in my weekend.
Ahead of your times. Yeah, always ahead of the times. But
awesome.
Thank you for having me here and congratulations on what you're achieving. At this time where people are so isolated and people are scared and fearful, it's really good to have a community, a place where we can all get together, where we can learn from each other, where we can share, where we can discuss. So it's an honor to be here. It's certainly beyond my wildest expectations to be at a festival with the big names that you've already had and those that you're going to have down the track. So thank you very much for having me here. And thank you for opening up a lot of people's eyes, hopefully, to electronic percussion, which for many years has been the kind of unknown, in some places, even dirty secret of drumming. I mean, back in the in the late 90s, there was electronic enhancement happening on all the big stage shows around the world, and people were actually hiding it. They were pretending that their kits were purely acoustic to appease their sponsors, but there was a lot of triggering happening. There was a lot of enhancement happening. There were a lot of tricks happening behind the scenes to make the live performance sound like the records that people had been buying at that stage. So thank you for giving me the opportunity to help open people's eyes and let them have some understanding of what's happening and what they can achieve, because theoretically all these things are tools in our toolbox. And in order for us to be the best drummers we can be, we have to know what's out there. We have to, pick and choose, use the tools that enhance our performance ability and give us the opportunities to express ourselves and find our creativity.
Exactly, and you're definitely right. I mean, you more than any of us watching know this better than us, because you've been in the absorbing a lot of the information from the artists themselves, right? That have
Yeah,
been using them at a high level,
yeah,
at a world class level.
absolutely. So
But
the artists and the manufacturers and the retailers and even end users, hackers in their 50s who've come back to drumming and finding that this is the way that they're getting into it. And perhaps that's my story, which is fairly typical. So, when I was approaching middle age and having given up drumming in my early 20s and wanting to come back to it now that I had a family, and living in suburbia, there was no ways I could assemble a big acoustic kit in the house and frighten off the neighbors. So I had to look outside the box, as it were, and electronic drums were something that I was vaguely aware of. And so I started kind of researching what was out there. I went to the drum shops, and firstly, I was quite appalled at the lack of information. Even the people on the shop floor had no idea what they were selling. And, I went into one music store, and there was a beautiful kit, and it had a big sign on it saying, "Do not touch." I mean, come on, guys. It's like going to a car dealer and saying, I want to buy a car, but you're not allowed to test drive it.
yeah,
So, that was fairly disturbing. And then, electronic drums are a kind of tool that you can't just set and forget. So you put a drum kit on a shop floor and you let people play with it, and they start messing around with settings. And then the next customer walks in and this thing is completely out of whack. None of the settings are right. The sensitivity is all over the place. The instrument lists have been changed. And unfortunately, the person on the shop floor doesn't necessarily understand what's happened before, and they don't know how to fix it, and they don't check it. And you go in and you play this thing, and it plays like rubbish, and then you go, well, digital drums are rubbish. And so, there was a lot of confusion. There wasn't a lot of information. I started looking at the magazines. And, again, I was quite shocked at some of the poor reporting. Yes, there are some great people. I mean, there are people like Mike Snyder, who's been writing for years, and there are heaps of people who did understand the industry, but they were few and far between. And the issue was that I think a lot of the drum magazine editors had no experience. So when somebody submitted a piece to them, they were looking at this as if it was something new. They had no comparison, no benchmarks. So a fairly frustrating process for me. Now, I'm a journalist. I've been a journalist for many, many years, more than I'd like to admit to. I've been a reviewer. I've done lots of technical reviewing type of stuff. So I was looking for that information. I couldn't find it in the magazines. The next step, of course, was to go to the forums, which were big in those days. But the forums were so partisan. There was a Yamaha forum, there was a Roland forum, and on each one, there were these, fanboys who would say, this product is the best, everything else is rubbish. So very hard to find decent information. Long story short, I started approaching manufacturers to get review kits, and I started doing reviews myself, started submitting them to magazines, initially with the Australian equivalent of NAMS magazine. And so started building credibility among the manufacturers, which is important because, if you need to review stuff, you need to get access to the gear in the first place. And then I was approached by a few other people, and my reviews started, being taken up internationally. And I started seeing some trends which I didn't like. The one is it's a very commercialized industry. So, if you have an advertiser and somebody reviews their product, there's a lot of pressure on the editors to make sure that it's a positive review. So I was finding that I would find negatives in products, and when I read it in print, the negatives were gone.
Yeah.
That was uncomfortable. Then in one case, one publisher asked me to do a review. We agreed on the product, and we started talking about fees because none of us can afford to do all of this for love. We do need to get paid.
Yeah.
And the publisher said, well, why don't you speak to the company and see what they will pay you? Now I'm going, hang on, how am I going to be objective reviewing a kit from a company that's paying me? This doesn't exist in any other industry that I'm aware of. So my frustration level grew to the point where I decided, stuff it, I'm going to publish my own magazine.
Yeah.
The internet was taking off. I was working on other trade publications, and a lot of us were moving from print to digital. And the reality was, to produce a print magazine is an expensive activity, because you design, you print, then you have to post, and sometimes the costs of production and distribution eat up anything that you can earn off the thing. So I decided, well, firstly, I'm based in Australia, and this is a very small market. The world is a big market, and the products are pretty much the same everywhere. Drummers are the same everywhere. So I have to aim globally. And I can't produce a global magazine from Australia and ship it to, everywhere from Norway to Hackensack to,
Yeah.
So I decided, okay, I'm going to do this digitally. And that's how Digital Drummer was born, both a digital magazine and covering digital percussion.
Wow.
And yeah, it was pretty much a solo effort. So back in 2010, published my first edition. Very lucky to get some good support from some fantastic people in the industry in those early days. I had a big break when the drum software manufacturer TuneTrack came on board. And not only did they advertise, but they sent my first edition to their entire database of 120,000 customers. So, that's a pretty good start.
Yes.
And the reality is,
Yes.
I would have paid them to do that. But
Yeah.
yeah, I had some good support early on. And I've just plugged away. And we recently celebrated our 10th edition.
Yes,
And
I noticed.
And people are now sort of taking us a lot more seriously than they did in those early days. I remember walking around NAMM at my first NAMM with my Digital Drummer shirt, and struggled to actually get interviews with the manufacturers at their booths. But certainly by the third or fourth visit, it was a lot easier. And it also, when you're walking around and some of the big name artists who you've interviewed come up and hug you and shake your hand and make a fuss of you. So
that helps credibility. Yes.
There's been a lot of acceptance. There's been a lot of credibility, and I'm humble enough to admit that all of this is due to the fantastic people who I speak to, whether it be the designers, the technology people behind the scenes, or the artists who do a fantastic job. One of the wonderful things I think about drummers, and you'd have seen this in pretty much everything that you do in the festival, is how sharing and open they are. You watch a guitarist doing a solo. What do? They turn their back to the audience, and no one can see what they're doing, and they kind of hide their skills. But drummers, they're just open. They just tell everybody how to do it. They go on YouTube. They break their signature beats down for people to learn. There's this kind of sharing ethos among drummers, which I don't think you find among other musicians, or certainly not to the extent. And I have learned so much from these people over the last decade. And my mind has been blown by some of the applications. And simple technology, but taken to the nth degree by people who not only have great chops and great talent and great musicality, but an understanding of what technology can do.
Yes. I have a question, Allan. What big changes have you noticed in the industry since you started the magazine? What big changes that you can give us?
Sure. Yeah. Look, I think there's been a seismic kind of shift in acceptance of digital drumming and electronic drumming. I mentioned the kind of dirty secret back in the early days when the technology was really hidden and you didn't know what was happening behind the scenes. But more and more, you're seeing the SPDX and SPDSX pads on stage. You're seeing the technology in your face, and drummers are upfront about their use of technology, their use of loops, their use of samples. So you're seeing it's much more visible than it ever been before. The technology is getting better. If we look at the drum kits of today compared to 10 years ago, night and day. Roland has just brought out an acoustic looking series of drums called the VAD. So they're full-size shells. They have, for the first time, a digital hi-hat, digital snare, and digital ride. Just, fantastic articulation, fantastic sensitivity, the ability to play rim shots the way you do, or a side stick the way you do on a regular snare. So there are just incredible advances in technology,
And so,
sampling.
so realistic too. The
Absolutely,
sounds.
yeah, yeah. You have modules like the Pearl Mimic Pro, which is just full of Stephen Slate samples. So they're real samples in real rooms, and you can control the ambience, and you can control the room mics, and you can control the attack. And close your eyes and watch a video, and you're not going to know that it's an electronic drum kit. So huge advances in
Exactly.
technology, and at the same time, obviously, big changes in pricing. So we
Yes.
have kits under $500 that do
Yes.
more than
That
you
are
could.
really pretty decent, and will last a while, and will take the beating.
And then at the top end, you have these Roland kits that run to several $1,000s.
Yeah.
But again, it's Rolls Royce and Chevrolet. There's something for everyone in the market.
Exactly.
So you've come an incredibly long way. But there's a lot of ironies as well. You spoke to Sibi Siebert a couple of weeks
Yes.
ago, who was the main demonstrator of Simmons drums in Europe. I've actually just wrapped up an interview with Sibi, which will appear in our next edition. A wonderful man who I know very well and have spent time with in Germany and at NAMM shows. But when he got into the Simmons story in the 80s, that distinctive sound was what they were looking for. Drummers were looking for a way to sound different and
Yes.
look different, and they sounded different. And there was no way you were confusing, the noises that he was making with, a Ludwig kit. This
Yeah.
was very different.
In the beginnings, it intended to be different, but now in our days, it's intending more to sound more natural.
Yeah, and that's the irony, isn't it? That we started off with a genre of music that was different. We wanted these weird analog sounds, which certainly shaped the soundtrack of the 80s.
Yes.
Duran, Spandau Ballet, Culture Club. There was something you know instantly that those are not acoustic drums. And then
Yes.
the industry has spent millions and millions of dollars to try and replicate something that was happening on an acoustic instrument on an electronic, which is kind of bizarre. You end up with this $7,000 Roland kit that makes sound like a $200 secondhand Tama kit.
Yes.
There's
Yes. Yes.
strange logic.
I think that it's fascinating because and hopefully again, it is the objective of this program and the festival to open up our minds and give us some knowledge that we can work with. So the thing about electric drums now that I've noticed from an end user, from an educator, because I also teach public school here in the United States in South Texas, and I see an application for them. I see a place for them in any type of music that I happen to be covering with my students. The thing that I notice about the electric drums, sometimes the acoustic drums you can't have the specific sound that you want at times, right? But the thing about electric drums is that the electric drums are going to give you exactly what you want to hear, no matter the situation.
Absolutely.
And to that, you can't say anything about that. I mean, it's gonna take you out of trouble.
Yeah. Well, before we go there, one thing I would jump on is I really dislike the term electric drums, and I mean no disrespect. A light bulb is electric, a drum kit is electronic, and the difference is it's not just on and off. They're electronic drums today are pretty much computers in a box, with samples and that. So it's very advanced technology. So don't let me hear you say electric drums again. But seriously, to your point, yes, there, especially in education, electronic drums are incredibly valuable for a number of reasons. Firstly, volume control. So kids nowadays, you can buy them an electronic drum kit, put it in their bedroom, and you're basically not going to hear them practicing. You're going to hear a tick, 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 tick kind of thing, but you're not.
Yes.
you're not exposed to, the thumping bass drum and the splashes. And so, very, very useful in urban domestic situations.
Environment.
So your kids can practice. But what you touched on there is the ability to play different sounds. So pretty much every electronic drum kit comes with a bank of kit sounds. And those generally range from, the weird and wacky analog sounds to acoustic, Latin, and some of them, you can even get down to brushes and jazz sounds. And that's very powerful for kids, especially with limited attention spans, because, when they get tired of playing their paradiddles on a Ludwig snare, they can play it, on dog box, or they can play it on tree chimes, or, so you can dial up any sound that you like. And not only does that add to the interest level, but also when you step out of that and you start gigging and you're wanting to sound like Status Quo or Korn or whatever, you can dial up a kit that sounds like the artist that you're trying to emulate. So that is incredibly powerful and incredibly useful.
Yeah. Yes, you can even once you have a certain drum set that you like, you can even adjust the tones of each one individually. It's just like guitar players and can really dial in on the sound that they want, and once they find it, it's the same thing with it. So it's pretty incredible. And the thing is, you can have personally, I appreciate all facets of percussion playing, whether it's acoustic, whether it's electric, whether it's country, whether it's rock, whether it's jazz, whether it's orchestral, whether it's Tchaikovsky, whether it's I appreciate all forms. The thing that really gets me is what electronic drums can really add to your toolbox. It can really expand it, and by buying, like you said, one of the least expensive kits, you're not just getting a drum set, you're getting many drum sets, many possibilities. And you don't have to switch and be full on electric. If that's what you don't want, that's okay. But you just went from one toolbox to like 20 of them with one purchase.
And it's not just the sounds, because increasingly electronic drums these days have built-in training tools. So everything from a metronome to the drumless tracks that you can play along to, things that measure your accuracy, things that measure your ability to keep the beat at various tempos. All of these things are built in and easy to use, and fun and engaging, and they've gamified drum tuition to the extent that you're kind of competing for your personal best, and you're trying to beat what you did before, and you're watching your accuracy levels, and you're able to focus and lock in. These are fantastic tools. They obviously don't replace education. They don't replace formal drum tuition.
Yes,
they augment it, and they make practice fun. And I think that's an important thing. A lot of us, I started off playing piano as a child, and I lost interest because it was boring. Yeah. I suspect if I had the equivalent of an electronic drum set for piano, which is a digital piano, I would have had so much more fun and been more engaged. And I think the kids of today have these fantastic opportunities to use these tools to build creativity, to lock in their practice, to encourage and motivate them. And gamification is a great teaching tool, turning something that could be tedious, dull, and boring into fun, exciting, challenging. That's really a very important thing that electronic percussion brings to the market.
I remember having a conversation with a fellow educator of mine, and we were talking about which practice pad we felt would be best for a beginner and why. And yes, there is, people tend to think that don't know about percussion, tend to think a practice pad's a practice pad, you're just going to hit it. But it has different things, different nuances, different feels for different, there is a science to the product. And the thing is, what he said is, honestly, guys, in the end of the day, you want to know what practice pad I prefer? The one that will get my student to practice.
Yeah.
That's the one.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah. If it has to be a one that's appealing to them because of the colors, it might
Yeah.
not feel the same, but it gets him to practice.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, on that score, I don't know whether Sibi shared it with you, but he's just bringing out an electronic practice pad.
Yes.
So,
Yes.
a hexagonal shaped practice pad that actually has the ability to play sounds.
Electronic applications. Yes.
So again, the kind of bizarre concept, but if it works and it encourages people to practice and it makes life easier and more fun, who are we to
Yes.
judge?
Yes. As an educator, I have learned that for me, I know maybe a lot of people won't agree with it or frown on it, or the thing is, again, whatever gets my students to practice. I see an application for CB Siebert's electronic practice pad.
Yeah.
Because if I can get that pad and I can sit there in front of class and I can get a different sounds on it and I can play it, and my kids are gonna be like this and they want to learn and they want to practice, that is worthwhile looking into. Right.
Yeah.
Anything that will help a student, that's my humble opinion. Now, I have a question. We've covered so far, Allan, who's using electronic drums, but how about pro drummers? Who's using them? How are they using them? What have you seen?
I can't actually name a top name drummer who isn't using electronics in some form or another. It's there. It's everywhere. You look at the last 2 or 3 Super Bowls. Brian Fraser Moore was using Roland gear alongside his other acoustic kits. So it's everywhere. It's Mark Schulman of Pink. Honestly, I can't name a drummer who doesn't use it in some form. So obviously there are extremes. There are people who are purely electronic drummers, but pretty much every acoustic drummer uses it in some form. There are either triggers, or they're, as I said, using their SPDX to play loops, or because the big thing is people go to a live performance and they're expecting to hear something very close to the original recording. And because recording technology is so advanced these days, people are doing things in the studio that you can't necessarily replicate live in an arena, in a stage, or in any kind of live environment. So it's really important that the band, if they want to sound, or the artist, if they want to sound like they did on the original, they need those sounds, whether they be, highly processed drum sounds, whether they be loops, whether they be stings. And increasingly that's falling on the drummer. And, we've got a big job keeping the rhythm section going and the backbone of the band, but now we also have to play all this other stuff as well, and thankfully the tools make it easy to do simultaneously. But I'm constantly amazed at, I'll give you an example. You go and see Fleetwood Mac in concert, and there's Mick Fleetwood sitting with this huge kit, and if you are at all familiar with the sound of the Roland tree chimes, you'll know that he's actually hitting a trigger rather than, because of the ergonomics of it, he's got so much to do on stage that he can't necessarily keep sweeping the chimes, but one tap on a trigger and you get the sound. So yeah, it's everywhere, and certainly when you're attuned to it, when you're looking for it, you see it everywhere, and it just increases the sense of realism of the performance. It really brings home the original recording to a live situation. And I guess one of the questions that we often hear is triggering cheating? Is it cheating? Well, at the end of the day, what are we doing? We're entertaining, we're performing, and we're using whatever tools are available to us. If it means playing a loop, if it means triggering a beat and playing over it, and if it is enjoyable and it serves the music, it's not cheating.
Exactly. It's one thing that music education did for me, going to college and receiving a music education, is to open my mind to a lot of concepts that would limit me, and that, and I'm talking me personally. It doesn't have to be something that everybody agrees. I guess we can all agree to disagree, but I think that it's just, again, another tool, another. There is an application for it. There is a play for it, a place for it, and thinking in absolutes sometimes it does hinder us. It does keep us. It puts a ceiling, a floor, and really nice compact walls around our education and our growth as a musician. And to me, I if anything is going to do that, to any of my students or any of my peers that ask for my opinion, I don't support it. I don't stand by it. If it's going to limit you, if it's going to expand your thinking and make you and help you go even further, regardless of whether I like the modality or not, I'm all down for it.
Yeah. Look, it's like, some of the heaviest drummers out there today, learn their craft the traditional way, and they can play timpani and they can play hand percussion. You see them on stage, with giant sticks smashing 20-piece drum kits, but take them away from that and give them, a jazz trio, and they'll show that they can cope with that as well. So it's all about, as you say, expanding your arsenal, looking at all of this stuff as, potential tools to enhance what you do. And pretty much every drummer who I've interviewed has stressed the importance of understanding the technology, of having the capability to deal with loops and samples, understanding MIDI, getting your head around this stuff. Especially now in these COVID times when people can't necessarily travel halfway around the world to a recording studio with their artist. What do? They sit at home, they lay down some tracks. In the old days, you used to, send tapes around. Well, we don't have the time to do that because deadlines are now fluid and everything.
Yeah.
So what do? You record it in MIDI. You add some samples using a VST program. You send it to the artist. If they don't particularly like the sound of the toms, you take it back. You just change the sample. You don't have to play it again. The MIDI is there. The kind of skeleton is there. It's just the wrapping that you're changing, and it's very easy to change. And
yes,
so this whole kind of global collaboration thing, which we're seeing more and more of now, it needs technology to drive it. We just don't have the resources anymore to fly around. Take your custom kit that you're so comfortable with to another city, set it up, have a drum tech stuff around, tuning and changing heads. The world doesn't have time for that anymore. We're demanding instant product, instant service, and technology is really making that possible. And there are a lot of artists out there actually doing a lot of recording at the moment, and never leaving their own homes. And 10 years ago, they couldn't have done it.
Exactly.
5 years ago, they might have struggled. But today, with pretty much a limited handful of tools, a laptop computer, a couple of sample packs, and the most rudimentary of drum kits, even a $600 kit, which you're not using the sounds, you're just using the triggering technology. You could be on the next top 10 hit.
Yes. I have a question, and I'm curious. What was Kenny Aronoff's opinion on electronic drum sets or electronic application?
Well, Kenny is a Yamaha DTX artist, so he uses them. He explained how he used them for practice a lot, and he used it for recording. It's a while since I've spoken to Kenny, and no doubt his needs and his applications would have changed. But he's the kind of artist who is so well established and so hardworking. That man is constantly on the go, that he would have everything that he needs under his own roof in terms of an acoustic studio. And so the necessity might not be as big on his part, but he certainly understands the technology. He certainly knows how to use it.
Yes.
Let's face it, Kenny can make anything sound good, can't he?
Yes. Yes. And okay. Now another question. Annika Niles. What was her take on electronics?
Yeah, she's another one who I guess is very much associated with acoustics. For those who are not familiar with Annika, she's a YouTube phenomenon,
Yeah.
fantastic drummer.
She's been to the States. Yeah.
Yeah, and she's made a name for herself basically as a demonstrating drummer. She's more known for herself than for the bands that she's played with or in. And she's recently come on board as a Roland artist, and she told me how she'd been using her kit not only for practice but again for collaboration. To work, especially during COVID. So I think she used it on her latest album with her band, which was done quite a lot of that was done remotely. So she would lay down tracks, choose the samples, and then share those with the rest of the band, and then bring it all together, electronically.
Wow. Another question, and the question I'm going to ask going to lead to one of the viewers' questions that I'm going to share with us right now. What are the biggest or the latest, what's in right now? The biggest technology releases, I guess, if that's if that explains it.
Sure. I think we've touched on this move away from hexagonal pads, wacky sounds, to ultra realistic acoustic emulation, and that's at every level. So
yes,
kits that look acoustic, full size shells, full size cymbals, two-piece hi-hats. Not just this pad, but an actual moving up and down, open and closed hi-hat. So there's a new range, as I mentioned, from Roland, the VAD, top end product, very expensive. But again, there's a waiting list on these. If you want to order one now, you're not going to get it, certainly till the third quarter of the year. And these are really impressive kits because they are based on real samples. It's not just the synthesis anymore. But within those real samples in the Roland version, you have immense editing capability. So you can start off with a sample of an 18-inch ride, and you can make it a 28-inch ride. And, you can add jingles, you can add, rivets, you can do all of that electronically. So you can have this kind of hyper-realistic sounding kit that is totally synthetic in a sense. It to the outside world, it looks like an acoustic kit in terms of the shells and the cymbals, but it's all coming out of a box. And there are a couple. The market has gone very much that way. So you've got ATV, which is a company that broke away from Roland. They do a similar thing. There's F-Note, which is the latest arrival in the market, and again they do some really good acoustic looking kits that have fantastic samples. Close your eyes and you really will think that you're in a room with an acoustic kit. So I think that is the big trend towards hyper realistic, hyper acoustic looking and sounding kits. But then there are other things happening all the time. One of the things we've written about is a thing called eDrum-In, which is a little box that is basically a trigger to MIDI interface. So you can take any triggers, any shell pack, any cymbals from any manufacturer, plug them into this box, plug the box into a computer, and you've got any sample selection from the major VST companies, the BFD and Toontrack and Superior Drummer and Addictive Drums. And you're doing all of that without a traditional drum module, because what you have now is something that electronically translates the impulses it picks up from the trigger, turns it into MIDI, and then you can do anything you like with it.
Yeah, you can trigger anything. Robert Boteo, which happens to be the founder of Valley Percussion Festival, his question is, where are the best places to download acoustic drum sounds for Roland TD? And he actually corrected himself. He says the Roland TD 17.
Okay. Well, we need to understand with the Roland approach. So there are some drum modules which allow you to import multi-layer samples. So you can take the Swedish 2-box, which is a derivative of the original D drum company, allows you to take multiple layers of sample and pack them into the module, and then it just basically plays them round robin as you play different velocities, so that you get all the nuances of an acoustic drum. Roland has taken a different approach. They allow you to import a single layer and then blend that with their sounds. So you can kind of shape it to sound like, the record that you're wanting to sound like, or the snare that you're wanting to sound like. It's not precise, and so you don't need the depth of samples that you would need for example, 2-box. The best place to download samples, look, I guess if you're just looking for a one-shot, you might as well just Google the sample that you're looking for, and somebody will have it. Because there's a big difference between getting a one-shot and then getting 128 layers of a snare, which really does need you to go to a very specific site. But the other alternative, of course, with something like a Roland TD-17 is to use it as a controller connected to your computer, and then use a VST collection like Superior Drummer or Stephen Slate, which is probably the most realistic drum sounds you're going to get, because these are real recordings in real studios with real ambience and the ability to edit every aspect of the performance, the attack, the decay, the reverb. You can edit all of that. So you're just basically using the drum kit as a source into your computer, where you can add all these samples. And there are some fantastic VST collections out there. I tend to recommend Addictive Drums because it has a very small footprint, so it doesn't take up a lot of space on your computer. It processes really fast. The sounds are pretty good, and for a limited number of samples, they have ways of processing them that gives you a number of different kit sounds from a small range of samples. If you're more adventurous, then you can look at Superior Drummer or BFD or Stephen Slate, which have a lot of opportunities to tweak the sounds. But those become rabbit holes, because you can get so involved in chasing the sound that you're after, and there are so many nuances and so many things that you can tweak that you can spend days chasing a sound that, and let's face it, at the end of the day, the audience isn't really going to know the difference. The audience is just going to know, gee, that's a cracking snare, or that's a thumping bass. That's as far as it goes. And again, to get back to what we said earlier, I think all of this is about serving the performance.
Yeah.
We can ruminate over minute details that at the end of the day don't necessarily add to the performance. And we can pursue this ideal sound, which is in our head, but doesn't necessarily do anything for anyone else. So I think we need to be a bit practical.
Yeah. Yes. I totally agree with you on that one. I totally agree. We're cooks in a restaurant, and we're there to provide the people what they want.
Yeah.
We might not like it, and we might go against their taste, but that's what they want. Right.
Absolutely.
And as performers, we're here to serve them, bottom line. Or else we have a very small or no audience, right? No audience for us to listen. Epic. What does Epic stand for? And you're a founder of that. One of the founders.
Epic is the Electronic Percussion Industry Council. So 4 or 5 years ago, Dave Levine, who's a former marketing manager of Simmons and now very active in the music industry as a distributor and as an artist promoter, and the man behind the Hit Like a Girl contest, which has become absolutely huge. So I've known Dave for a number of years, and we were talking about how we can raise the profile of electronic drums, and we came up with this concept of an industry council. Unfortunately, there was initial interest, but much as I said, drummers are very much sharing, caring people. The manufacturers less so. And it's been very difficult to get them to sit down at a table. And I mean, we were talking about simple things like trying to standardize some of the things in the industry. You know, little things like, can we agree that we color code the hi-hat label yellow and the snare blue or whatever? And that's not a trivial issue these days, because more and more we're seeing electronic drum modules with a kind of harness input. So all of the inputs are on this one DB25 cable that slots into the module. Now, it's pretty important that that harness works for all triggers and all modules, but at the moment everybody kind of does it differently. So that was our aim with Epic. Unfortunately, it's been an uphill battle, and while we would have loved to have been able to say, yes, the industry came together and we can all speak as one, because the enemy, if you were, is not the other drum companies. The enemy is the alternatives to electronic percussion. And if we all work together to raise the profile, we could probably achieve it. As it turns out, I think COVID has done more for invigorating the electronic drumming industry than anything we could have done with Epic. So what we've seen during COVID is people stuck at home, people with a lot more time on their hands, a lot of mature age drummers getting back into drumming after not doing it for many years. And the only way they could do that with their family around them and everybody stuck in the house is to go out and buy an electronic drum kit. So, you know, a huge explosion in sales across the board, in the shops, on the forums. If you look at Reverb, the secondhand market has gone through the roof. So an incredible interest in electronic percussion, all really stimulated by this need to stay at home.
Yeah.
So in a sense, it would have been nice to have had the success ourselves, but you know, it took a pandemic to raise the awareness to the level that it's at now.
That is sad. Yes, I was talking to Tim Palmer from the World Percussion Group. He was telling me a day or two ago that they're always characterized by auditioning and having in their traveling group ridiculously insane talent from the international pool of students that they have. But he was telling me, Gilbert, the level of playing is truly ridiculous this year. He goes, it's insane. Yeah. It's insane, man. I have never seen this level of playing before. And, my comment to him was like, COVID forced him to stay at home and practice. Yeah. And he goes, LOL, it looks like that was the case. Yeah. So I think that there was a positive out of all of this. Yeah. I guess what
are we practicing for? Because there are so few opportunities to perform in public. So, it's kind of, we're getting better and better and don't really have a lot of people to share it with. But hopefully, that's going to change and things will start.
Yes. And I think there's going to be a big boom in what we're going to see in the music industry, and in particular in our branch or our niche, right? The percussion world. There's going to be a boom in literature, in creativity, in probably names of people that we don't know that are waiting to be discovered. It's going to surprise us big time. I guess in conclusion, Allan, what predictions, what do you foresee in the next, let's say 5-10 years from now in the electronic drums area?
Oh, right. Well, I mean, it's clear it's not going away. Electronic percussion is here to stay. It's mainstream now. It's the kind of hard slog of getting awareness, I think, is over. The products are out there. We have a range of products from kind of affordable to aspirational. We have tools for pretty much every application within performance, within education, within practice. I think we're going to see the technology get better. And there are a couple of things that I've been quite surprised about over the years. A few years ago, Alesis brought out a dock which allowed you to turn your iPad into a drum module. So effectively, you connected all your drum pads to this dock, you slid your iPad in, the samples all lived on your iPad, and you could control everything from the iPad. And I was convinced that this was the future of electronic percussion, because iPads are just getting smarter and smarter. Their power, their memory is all just exponentially growing. The prices are coming down, the value is improving. So, a simple device that connects the iPad to drum pads or to whatever input kind of tools you want to use. I'm surprised that it would. Well, I understand that Alesis had to stop what they were doing because Apple moves so fast. You design a product for one generation, and then Apple's already got the next one out on the store, and it's very hard to keep up with. And yeah, I understand those challenges, but other industries and other applications have managed to keep up with Apple. So I would be surprised if in the next 5 years there is not a dependable, reliable, and extremely powerful iPad interface, which allows us to use that as the controller and the brain of electronic drums. A big innovation that we saw a few years ago that didn't take off, again to my shock, horror, and alarm, was wireless drums. So there's an Eastern European home tinkerer who came up with this wonderful system called VersaTrigger. Basically wireless remote drums. Each one has its own little box, and no matter where it is in the room, it talks to a drum controller, a computer, or whatever. And the most messy thing about electronic drums is the spaghetti,
the cabling, yes,
and the hassle involved in setting up and pulling down. So that's a thing that surprised me that it didn't take off. I believe that it will take off. We're seeing a renewed interest in analog drums again. So we're back to kind of what Simmons started off with, but now much more affordable, much more powerful, and pretty much every synth manufacturer is working on some kind of analog drum solution. There's Nord, there's a whole bunch of them. And there's a lot of interest in those wacky, weird sounds again. And I think music producers and artists are opening their minds to different sounds. So we're getting away from the need to replicate an acoustic sound electronically. We're going back to kind of native electronic sounds. There's a huge move towards, drum pad, multi-pad devices of all kinds. So finger drumming of all types is now taking off, and electronics allow you to make any sounds you like from any pad you like, and in the right hands, those things are just incredible.
Yes,
and I think we're not going to escape the power of MIDI. If you need to do anything in electronic drums, you really need to understand MIDI. And there are some fantastic drummers who can sit down at a laptop and actually write the notation as if they were performing in a studio. And people like Wolf, who's played with some of the biggest artists around, New York-based drummer, he's just a whiz. And while he has amazing chops behind the kit, put him behind the laptop, and without touching a drum controller, he can actually write the music, which is just mind-bogglingly talented.
yes.
I think anybody who wants to be a drummer in the 21st century has to understand MIDI, has to understand triggering, has to understand loops. So I think there's going to be much more awareness on the part of drummers of their need to embrace technology to make them well-rounded musicians. And I think that technology companies are pushing as fast as they can, both to make hyper-realistic, affordable, reliable electronic drums that are fun to play, but also to enhance creativity through analog, through sample manipulation, through synthesis. And I think it's all just going to blossom and develop. And I would anticipate that at some stage it's going to be increasingly difficult to find an acoustic kit on a music store floor, and it's going to be easier and easier to find electronic kits.
Hmm. I see. I see. Um,
And I would say that Digital Drummer will still be there.
yes, I was about to segue into that. Digital drummer. Where can we get it? How can we get it? How can we sign up for it?
Okay, so we're a purely online, as I mentioned, purely digital. So if you go to www.digitaldrummermag.com, there's a free subscription sign up. The magazine is a quarterly in magazine format, and then in the 2 months between each quarter, we have an electronic newsletter. So plenty of content, 12 times a year, covering new products, artist profiles, applications, DIY. We haven't spoken much about DIY in this, but a lot of drummers are tinkerers as well, and they take things apart and they try to work out how things are built. And there's a very large DIY market. So people are converting their acoustic kits to electronic by just building their own triggers or buying trigger kits, putting mesh heads on their drums, and suddenly turning what was an acoustic kit that they couldn't use at home to something that they can now use every day. And we're there to help advise how it's done, show how some people have done it,
Wow.
share ideas, share tips, which is unusual because most of the mainstream media are so focused on serving the needs of their advertisers that they would never undermine their products by showing readers how to do it themselves. But at the end of the day, we're delivering education, entertainment, and information to an audience of drummers around the world. We've opened their eyes to electronics. We've, I guess, ridden on their enthusiasm. And my job is really to keep them informed in the best way I can, objectively, independently, and with their interests at heart. If advertisers want to reach that market, they're there, but we're not there to do the work of advertisers. We're not there to, promote people unnecessarily. If a product is good, we'll say it's good. If it's not good, we're not going to lie about it. And
Yeah.
I think at the end of the day, there is nothing like credibility. There's a lot of showmanship out there. There's a lot of bravado, but at the end of the day, it's about, doing the hard yards, being analytical, being thoughtful, being critical, having an understanding of what's out there, but more importantly, having an understanding of what our readers need, what they want, what they can use, what they will use, what they won't use. And that's really what I'm interested in doing. At the end of the day, the magazine is out there for free. If you want to read it, you can read it. If there's nothing in it for you, that's fine. There's plenty of other sources of information.
You said digitaldrummermag.com?
Oh, yeah. Somebody is sitting on the Digital Drummer domain and trying to demand an enormous amount of money for something that they have no use for. But yeah, that's exactly it. And it's there for the taking. So you're welcome to sign up. You won't get bombarded with advertiser information or anything else. The only time you'll hear from us is when there's a new magazine or a new newsletter that you can click on and access. And we're here to serve you. We're here to serve the industry. We're here to serve music, and we're here to have some fun and learn some stuff along the way.
Awesome. Allan, so excited and so glad to be able to have you here. So thankful to you. So willing to share your information. And again, to me as an educator, it's invaluable what we can take and what we can, in turn output, whether it's performing, whether it's educating, it's going to have a serious impact. Thank you so much for sharing this with us. Any closing words?
Well, firstly, thank you very much for having me here. I'm one of those people who loves to fly the flag for the things I believe in, and it's great to have the platform and the opportunity in it, and also an opportunity within a respected festival like yours.
Thank you.
So I'm really thankful that you've given me the opportunity. I must say that this hour has absolutely flown for me. Hopefully the listeners and the viewers have had a good journey. If anybody has any questions at any time, please contact me either through our Facebook group or through our website. I'm always happy to answer questions. I have readers constantly asking me for advice or sharing stories. And really, I'm passionate about this. This is something that I really believe in. I'm here to help. I'm here to learn just as much as anyone else. And there are no such things as dumb questions.
No,
I think we've all learned. We've all been in a position where we don't know what we don't know. So ask your questions. Try and find out. Try and be informed. There's a lot of opportunity out there to find tools to enhance your drumming. Just open your mind. Look around. Don't take the first word that you see. There are a lot of people on YouTube who are pontificating about electronic drums, as there are about everything. There are experts, and there are so-called experts, and there are people pretending to be experts. All I can say is open your mind, open your eyes, open your ears, search, listen, talk, ask questions, and find something that seems to work for you, because there are products for everybody. There are services for everybody. There's something that's going to help you. There's something that's going to make you a better drummer, and you're going to have fun along the way. So yes, I'll see you on the other side.
Yes. Thank you. Thank you so much, Allan. I will use those words of yours as our closing. Guys, see you soon. Tomorrow there will not be a stream for tomorrow only. We will be back next weekend, Friday and Saturday. Stay tuned to our social medias and platforms, and you will get some additional information on the artists. Trust me, you don't want to miss it. Thank you so much, Allan. Stay safe. Enjoy your weekend.
Keep up the good work, buddy.
Thank you.
Hi, my name's Corey Doran.
Awesome Clinic by Corey Doran.
Are you breaking things down early enough to exercise certain skill sets? Remember to get out of those habitual stopping point to exercise certain skill sets early enough to make sure that you have the tools to do it.
All those concepts, as you could see in Corey's clinic, they're perfectly transferable to any time that you're going to learn any etude for any situation, right?
I'm here to talk about how to break down a solo and ensemble snare drum etude. I want to thank my sponsors, Innovative Percussion, Sabian Cymbals, Mapex Drums, and Majestic Percussion.